So the concept that I connected with the strongest was the concept of culture in education. Both of my parents were born overseas and I speak Spanish at home, so my background comes to play a lot in my life. I think that would have been the case with the majority of students at my primary school. In a group of, say, 5 students, there would be 3, maybe 4 different cultures. Every year we would have a day or two dedicated to diversity, where students would dress up and bring food from their backgrounds. But that was really it. It was kind of its own thing. It wasn't really integrated in our learning. I recall one instance where we had a school play based on the theme of around the world. Some countries were addressed embracing their cultures with dances, foods, outfits and customs. I remember specifically Africa was addressed with animals, like something out of The Lion King. Instead of focusing on the people and how they lived, it focused on real service things. Looking back now, it seemed like a missed opportunity to embrace and teach about the experience of a different group, but I guess that wasn't really something that we're used to focusing on.
Okay, so during my primary school years, I had experience with engaging with ATSI culture as we gained 2 Aboriginal students named Sydney and Adrian, and they were brothers. These boys were fostered by a friend, their family from school. They came from a very poor family in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales, and they were given the opportunity to restart their life and do whatever they'd like. Being a co-ed school made it very easy when change came around. Everyone loved them and wanted to be around them. The school had even suggested that they join the local footy team to feel more included, as that is where all the boys and girls went for either playing football or netball. When Sydney was in year 6, we had a buddy system, so year 6s have a prep buddy, and he actually was my little brother's buddy when he was in prep. So that's a way that he feels like he is a part of the school community and is just like everybody else. So yeah.
At the all-boys school I went to, there was a distinct lack of tolerance or empathy for those of any sexuality other than heterosexual. This could be evidenced in the daily insults hurled around the playground. Any physical contact that wasn't on the sports field or a form of fighting was automatic evidence that the offending boy was gay, which everyone understood was very much an undesirable lifestyle. This was only a few years after Freddie Mercury had died of an AIDS-related illness, and the public perception was still very much one of fear at homosexuality. The teachers themselves led by example that their students' main achievement in life was to finish their time at school as well-adjusted masculine young men with an abundance of sporting prowess and healthy interest in the opposite sex. During our first games lesson, the head of games began the lesson by lecturing the entire year that things had changed now and we wouldn't be able to hide behind mummy's apron anymore. We were constantly referred to as ladies, as if it were the most derogatory insult a young man could possibly be called, with no thought or concern that some of us might not identify as being male necessarily. It was ingrained into us that anything other than heteronormativity was a perversion.
Throughout my early education, I was exposed to a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, backgrounds, and awareness on how to respect the land that we live on through education on the past. Although I never experienced having first-hand Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander students in my classroom, we still learnt about the impacts education may have on them. In my school, gender was a great social aspect of the curriculum, with my schools both being co-education primary school and high school. We were both given lots of opportunities to join in with all of our classmates, and we were encouraged to join in on subjects that we had interest within, such as a woman joining the football side or a male joining the sewing class. There was always equal opportunity for all the students, and everyone respected the decisions that we all made, which helped build the social interactions between both peers and teachers.
During my experience in school, I had a couple of ATSI students attending with me. While at primary school, we had the acknowledgement of country before the national anthem. We also helped celebrate Ngardak Week, which celebrates the history and culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. During Ngardak Week, we had activities that were solely based on Aboriginal culture, such as having an elder that would come and speak to us and tell us some Dreamtime stories. During Year 12, I was able to start my Cert 2 in Community Services, and during the course we had a unit on ATSI people, and I was able to be in contact with an Aboriginal elder within my community, and with the help of my Vice Principal, we were all able to have a new acknowledgement of country made for our school. My experience within a co-ed schooling environment was a pretty positive place where you were treated the same and given opportunities to strive for excellence.
At the high school that I went to, majority of students there were Asian. So as someone who's half Japanese, half Australian, I found that I could quite naturally relate with students that were Asian, as well as the students that were white Australian. However, at the same time, I found that I'm not actually Asian, and I'm not actually Australian. So I found that, especially at this school, I stood out more as like a white student because everyone else was Asian. And so I guess the fact that that made me different from the majority, that's what set me apart, and that's where my cultural identity came from in that context. Whereas in other social situations, I may stand out as the Asian person in the group.
Okay, so when you become a teacher, do you want to instill that cultural knowledge in your learning for your students, even if it's not a part of the curriculum?
Yeah, of course. I think there's definitely better ways to go about it, and having its own separate day. I feel like you can integrate it, say, with your English or with your geography. Definitely, kind of place it into what we're learning. I think that way it becomes more meaningful. As I said in the video, I felt like it was very much they were just doing it to kind of get it ticked off.
Rather than actually caring about it.
Rather than actually caring about it, because that's the only time it ever came up, really. Just thinking critically about it, do you think that your school would have addressed it if it wasn't a current issue, if there wasn't two students,
Yeah. My school actually addressed the Aboriginal side of things with or Torres Strait Islander people, that when we had art every Tuesday, and our art teacher would make it that we would learn their art and the dotting paintings and stuff, and really teach us in depth, not just drawing, but they would explain, the teacher would sit and explain for about half an hour and give us videos on what their symbols mean and all that kind of stuff, which allowed us to learn a lot more other than just sitting in class on a mat.
Yeah.
Was that before the Aboriginal?
Yeah. Yeah, everyone was really accepting of them and loved them so much, and everyone was, in a way, everyone was talking to them and wanting to learn from them instead of sitting in the classroom
and reading books or
with the teachers telling us. So we would ask them what's your house like? What's your family like? Do you have cousins? And what's your school like? And you learn that they've got nothing, and that everyone's trying to not escape but expand to better their life.
I guess this comes a lot in how your primary school was. Do you think that if it was from a different background, that would have been the same case? Let's say if two Italian kids came, would you guys?
Yeah, I guess it's harder to tell because they are Australians, they are the Australians, and I feel like if another country or culture or religion or something came in, it would be a little bit brushed aside. Because it's not as so it's hard to tell though.
I suppose there's a bit more of an element of focus and sort of an underlying element of maybe cultural guilt towards Aboriginal people.
Exactly.
Whereas if it was to Italian kids, there's already Italians who come to Australia are already kind of on a more equal footing.
Do you think that your school inputted standard 1.4 in their curriculum?
Well, no, because we didn't actually have Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander students within the classroom. I feel like they didn't actually really get to know their backgrounds and cultures. We sort of learnt from books and watching YouTube videos rather than actually having, Brittany had at her primary school, real life stories, experiences. We did have a person that came in once a month or a few months and played the didgeridoo, but he really just read a book as well to us. We never actually got to know the real life experiences.
So I think our school, my primary school, we didn't have many ATSI students like my high school we did, but we definitely tried to incorporate a lot of the Aboriginal culture into our curriculum. During primary school, we had a lot of elders coming to school, definitely more in my later years at primary school. They tried to incorporate it. And we had Nardok Week,
Would you have preferred to learn more about Aboriginals in school compared to not having it at all?
Yeah, well, I feel like this day and age we learn a lot about like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and I feel like to fully respect the land and all that, we kind of need to know from like a first-hand experience rather than like some books are from, there's like that many different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, like, what are they called? Tribes, and like
All
they,
different clans.
yeah, and all different tribes speak differently, like there's so many different,
Like hard to teach it without having
Yeah.
some like an Aboriginal elder or like someone with that background and that knowledge coming in and actually speaking about it rather than just reading from a textbook. Like this is
you
what
don't
it's
know
like.
what's like
Yeah,
true or not.
yeah, and I think a lot of what we learn is quite quite superficial or like
It's more like real life experiences where you learn, sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like what we have in our textbooks and in our curriculum is often like a white perspective of it, or like it's
It's a
not
secondary source.
yeah.
Was there ever an experience with a child who was perceived to be homosexual, like that?
At high school, there was a kid in my class who either potentially was gay or everyone said that he was gay, who was teased absolutely mercilessly. I think he left after the third year or so. And I mean, the last I heard, I think he actually was, like, he had come out, was completely happy and had kind of put it all behind him. But I mean, I just imagine in high schools these days that kind of, it would just be handled so differently to my experiences. You know, people are freer to be open about their sexuality, I would hope.
Based on like your experiences in high school, like when you become a teacher, what kind of culture would you want to create to kind of
I guess the exact opposite to what I experienced. Just so much more a culture of openness and people feeling free to be whatever they are, whatever gender they might feel like, whatever sexuality. Just the exact opposite of what I experienced.
Yeah, would you consider sending him to an all-boys school, or would you prefer like the co-ed?
Definitely co-ed.
Whether schools change the way society is, or if society changes the way schools are. And I think with your case, it was very much, this is how society perceives things, and we're going to kind of that's how it's going to be in the school as well.
Yeah.
I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, all the teachers, they just kind of went by what was expected of them in society.
schools were only like that because that's how society was at the time. But the fact that schools had created this culture for students that were that kind of grew up not being able to respect people that homosexual or had these different characteristics, then that kind of made them not be able to know better or not be able to respect people.
It's kind of like a cycle.
Yeah, it's just a cycle.
Keeps going.
So that's like how if you're kind of changing the education system, it kind of has that effect of it's changing people's beliefs and attitudes towards.
And also, hopefully, there's people who went to that school, like myself, who came out of it and kind of went, well, that's not right, and then would go on to be teachers.
My school was very, I guess, quite competitive, especially academically, and I felt like I wasn't really that, like, I kind of saw myself more as a white person, because kind of when I looked around, like, okay, I don't really fit into this stereotype or this kind of cultural identity of.
Was there that pressure at school as well? Like, was there pressure to like do well and like?
Definitely, yeah. There was a lot of pressure to do well, and I feel like because of these stereotypes of like, okay, if you're Asian, you're going to be really smart, and like if you're white, you're like going to be really sporty. I kind of, because I felt more white in this context, I kind of felt like I latched onto a lot of my like sportier tendencies,